So we're just going to pretty much pick up where we left off. Give me just a second. I'm going to fix something weird going on with one of my slides. Come on. Yeah, we don't want that. Okay. All right. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, let me get my screen shared. Desktop 2. Okay. So, one of the things that can be a little overwhelming about learning about arrays is there's just so many of these methods, right? And we only got into like the first 4 of these, right? Includes, index of, reverse, and sort. And then we did a little bit in those practice exercises with like splice and stuff like that. But I'm gonna go thoroughly over the rest of these today. And the good news is, just so you guys understand, you're not expected to memorize like all of these and retain them in perpetuity, because this is why developers Google things, because there's so much to remember, and there might be, a method that is the right one to work, but you can't remember quite how to use it. Like the other day in lecture when I didn't quite remember how to use splice. It's been forever since I used splice for anything, and I just didn't 100% remember what all the arguments were and in the right order. And that's okay. So this is what being resourceful is for. You just go look things up. So I'm going to make sure you understand how to use them, just so you kind of have a general idea of, this is probably the one that I need to use. And if you're not sure how to use it, then you go look it up again, right? But they're all useful for different things. The more you kind of get into the programs you'll be building, you'll kind of discover for yourself which ones you find you're using more often than others, that sort of thing. So I kind of, your course book, they actually have them categorized now, which is really nice. It used to be like one big long list. And I kind of followed those same categories with the exception of join, because technically that's not creating an array, it's creating a string from an array. And so let's get into these. I'm going to go skip past. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so we did all of this before. Dun, 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 dun. Reverse, and we talked about kind of how every time you use reverse, it reverses it, whether you're console logging it or just calling it or whatever. Sorting, we talked about, same thing. If you use it, it sorts it. And so with numbers, of course, it treats it like strings. Okay, and then this came up during the studio review, and I actually originally had told you guys that you just would keep using concat with one array, but you actually can put in multiple arrays, and you just put them in order from left to right. So let's look at this example. If I want to combine all of these colors in rainbow order, how would I do that? I don't know if I have any of my people who like to speak up here today. So I might just have to tell you. So you would call it on the very first array that you want. So we'd start with Roy and call concat, and then we would give it the remaining arrays that we want to tack on. So we have Roy, we have G, we have Biv, right? And so then we would expect that that would produce. Now, is this going to produce, an array of arrays? Or is it going to produce a single array with a whole bunch of elements?
A single?
Yes. So you'll have one single array that just blends them all together, and they'll all be in the order you gave it. So Roy, G, Biv. Okay, that's pretty much all you need to know about that. That's how concatenation works with arrays. Okay, so slice. This works very similarly to the way slice works with strings. And I've simplified this, and I actually updated the slides for the string section of the lecture as well to be a little clearer. Consider start and end that basically just represents, two indices, right? And when you use slice, it creates a new array, but it does not change the original array. So you want to make sure that you are, if you need to grab that value and save it, you are storing it in a new variable. Start is the very first element you want to include, and end is the index after the last element to include. And you can just use dot slice with start if you want to include everything to the end of the array. That works the same way as strings. Okay, so we've got this hodgepodge array here of numbers and strings and Booleans. So let's say I want to separate all these out. How would I do that using slice for the numbers?
Wouldn't it be a hodgepodge dot slice 0 and then 1, 2, 3, 4, the last element, whatever,
Yes. So which index would that be?
7.
Oh, if we just want the numbers out of the array, though,
3.
it would not be 3 because for whatever reason, you have to choose the end as being the index after the last one you want to include. So if we want to include 3, we actually have to specify 4. This is what trips people up, and it's the same thing for strings, and that's why everybody was getting confused. And I changed the way that I was referring to it, because before I was saying stop +1, but I think it's clearer to just have, end, but end, you just have to remember that end actually means go up to this point, but don't include it. So we're going up to 4, but we're not including it. We're only doing 0, 1, 2, and 3. So then we would expect to see that numbers, if we were to, console log numbers, we would get 0, 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Okay, so with that knowledge, how would we get letters?
Hodgepodge dot slice, and then 4 and 6.
You nailed it. 4 and 6, yeah, because we want 4 and 5, but we don't want 6. Yep. And so then we would expect to see A and B. Okay, Booleans.
Hodgepodge dot slice, was it 6 and 8?
You could do it that way, perfectly valid. But this is an example where you don't actually have to specify the end, because then it just goes to the end of the array. So if we want to include everything to the end, we can just give the starting one, and we don't have to do anything else. And then,
Okay.
yeah.
So if you just want to grab from any point in that to go all the way to the end, you just put your start.
You got it.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that's this bullet point right here, the third bullet point right here. I keep forgetting I'm pointing to things on a different monitor than you guys are actually looking at, and so you don't see my mouse like right here, but you can't see that. Yeah, okay, so that's how slice works. You just, you can go and grab, a range of elements, and you can specify exactly where you want to start and stop under those rules. Okay, so another way to create a new array is to split a string. And split, you give it a delimiter, which means the character or characters that you want to use it to divide it up. The split points, you can kind of think of them. And it turns, this is one that's a string method, but you turn a string into an array. So the new array's elements are the substrings that are in between, but not including the delimiter. So we've got this example here. Oh, okay, hold on. We got one more bullet point. Oh, yeah. And you can use split with just an empty string if you want to make sure everything's included and just make every single character its own element. That can be done as well. So let's do this. A short phrase with 6 words, right? So we would say, phrase dot split, and then to get it into those 6 words, we would just say the spaces are what we want to use to be the delimiter, right? And so then what would you expect to see in the array?
Would it be a short phrase with 6 words, but missing the spaces?
Exactly. Yep. So you get all of those strings that the substrings that it goes and finds that are between all the spaces, but it doesn't include the spaces. Okay, so here's a tricky one for you. I want phrase array at index 2, and I want to split it into individual characters. What am I going to get?
PHRASE.
Good job. Yeah, so this is an example of where I've actually used split, because split works on both arrays and strings, and you already learned about split on strings, but it's the same concept. You can use an empty string and it will break it down by characters. And I actually, okay. So this line, that 4th bullet point, I'm talking about characters. Yeah, no, that's true. Sorry, guys. I'm like, I don't mean to be confusing. The entire thing's a string method. It's a string method. So yeah, you either break it down by like substrings of any length, or you can break it down by individual characters. That's how you do it. All right. So the reverse of that is creating a string from an array. So this is where it's an array method, but it doesn't create an array, it creates a string. So join, and you give it a connector. It will take all of the elements and make them into one big long string, and it uses the connector to put them all together. And if you want there to be no connector, you just use an empty string. Kind of the opposite concept again. So we got this array mixed data. We got clock, 34, false, 0, trombone. First of all, is this going to work having mixed data types like this?
Yeah,
What do
it'll
you-
work.
Yeah, because it would just turn the whole thing into just a string, right?
Yep, it basically just automatically converts every single element into a string in the process. So what would we do if we wanted to join each of these with 2 hyphens?
Let double dash equal mixed data dot join, and then with the hyphens.
You got it. Yep, double hyphen as a string. So that's the connector, and you just use it with join, and then it will give you a string, right? Clock dash dash 34 dash dash, etc. And that's kind of a silly example, but I just wanted to kind of cover a whole range of concepts there all at once. Okay, so now let's look at Jenny digits. What are we going to get when we join this together with an empty string? Bonus points if you sing it. Okay, I will sing it.
That's
Yeah, we'll get 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 0, 9. Yep, you got it. Okay, you have to have fun with this stuff, guys. You have to keep it interesting. Okay, so that's pretty much that, right? Everybody clear? Join is really straightforward. Okay, so now we're going to get into the methods where we add or remove elements. There are 5 ones that you would use probably most of the time, and some of them you'll use more than others. But I'm going to kind of do them by which part of the array you're working on. We'll break it up that way. So let's talk about the end of the array. Pop will change the original array by removing the last element. And pop also has a return value. So if you actually want what that last element is, you can, you can store that or use it somehow, because it'll return that element that was removed. But either way, it changes the original array. Push is the opposite. Push is where you add one or more elements to the end of the array. So you can give it as many things as you want to add all at once. So we've got clothing equals shirt, pants, dress, socks. What if I wanted to remove socks, what would I do?
Let last element equal clothing dot pop.
Yep, clothing dot pop. And because I stored it in a variable, if I go and I console log last element now, what should I see?
Socks,
Dress.
right?
Socks. Yep. Because it returns that value for you if you when you do it. And a lot of times you just need to pop it and you don't need to set it equal, like, and store it in something. So you could have just, we could have just done clothing.pop and it would have removed it. And we didn't need the socks. That's very common. But if you needed it, it returns it. And so then we expect clothing to be what?
Shirt, pants, dress.
You got it. Okay. So now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to say we want to push belt, hat, and shoes. So what would that result in?
Shirt, pants, dress, belt, hat, shoes.
Yep, exactly. Just tacked all three of those right onto the end of all the existing elements that were left after we did the first thing. And this is an example of where, you just call it clothing.push. You don't have to do anything fancy other than that.
If you have an empty array
Mhm.
and you're trying to push something to it, will it just add it to it, even if there's nothing in there?
It always adds it to the end. So if it's empty, that means it starts at index 0. Yep. And that's extremely common. And we'll see some examples of that in the future, because I'm gonna do something at the end here where we'll practice that. Okay, so then let's move to the beginning of the array. Shift changes the original array by removing the first element. And shift also has a return value, just like pop does. And it will give you back the element that was removed from the beginning. Unshift, I guess they didn't have a more original name for it. And it's kind of weird, but it's the opposite of shift. So that's why I'm doing these together. We'll add elements to the beginning of the array. So, there's times when it might be convenient to be tacking things onto the beginning rather than the end. There's a lot of use cases for that in the data world. And so this is what we'll do it on shift. So again, shirt, pants, dress, socks. We start with the same original array. What if I want to take off that first element? What would I do?
Let first element equal clothing dot shift.
You got it. And so then first element equals
Shirt,
and clothing equals
pants, dress, socks.
Yep. Okay. Now we want to add in belt, hat, and shoes again. What's it going to look like now with unshift?
Belt, hat, shoes, pants, dress, socks.
Exactly. It puts them all at the beginning. Okay. So this is pretty straightforward, right? You can take one away at a time, or you can add as many as you want. And these two are for the beginning of the array. This is the one that takes a little bit more thought. Splice. We talked a little bit about this during lecture on Thursday night, but this one inserts or removes elements anywhere in the array. So you can be very specific about exactly where you want to start, how many you want to remove, and whether or not you want to add some things. And if so, what are those things? So index is the starting point.
Hey, Carrie.
Yes.
Do you mind if I give them a little something to kind of help them remember, like on the push and the pop and the shift and the unshift?
Okay.
If they think of it as a stack of pancakes. And so
Yeah.
if you visualize the stack of pancakes, so when you push, you're pushing one on top of each other. And then when you pop it, you're taking the top off of each other. So like you're eating pancakes. So when you're pushing, you're putting it on the plate and you're stacking them one on top of each other. So that's a good way to visualize it. I always get confused with shift and unshift. I have to think about those, how to
Yeah,
work
and
with that.
it is tricky because with stacks, like when you're actually working with the concept of stacks and data, what you deem to be the front of the array and the back of the array can get real confusing real fast when you're talking about it vertically, right?
Yeah.
But that's something you guys can look into if you're interested in that sort of thing. If you ever interview at Google, that's something you absolutely have to understand is how they work with, like the stack concept and data. But yes, there are lots of ways that you can visualize those things for yourself to help yourself remember. I find that in most of the things that I do, I'm tacking things onto the end and not the beginning. So I'm almost always using push and pop. And so I hardly ever use shift and unshift, but that's because I'm a front end developer. There's probably lots of cases with data where you're not doing it that way. Okay, so on to splice. We have the index is the starting point. Where do you want to insert and or remove? And then the amount of elements to remove. And if you aren't planning on removing anything, if your whole point of doing this is because you're just adding things, then you would just set amount to 0. You can also add the elements, and that's the last part, the item 1, item 2, etc., as many as you want. So we're going to start with shirt, pants, dress, socks. This is looking familiar, right? Let's say I do clothing.splice 2,1. What is that going to produce?
Shirt, pants, socks.
It should. Oh, I see. I'm missing a bullet point. I'm like, why is that not coming out? Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Yes, shirt, pants, socks. Because it basically just said go to index 2, and which is dress, and just remove that 1. That's the number of things to remove. And then on the next one, if I wanted to just add in shoes and hat, I could say, go to index 1, don't remove any, but add in shoes or hat. And what would that produce?
Shirt, shoes, hat, pants,
And socks. We still have socks.
and socks. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the only one we removed up here was dress. Okay, and this brings me to the last bullet point up here. You can use splice with just the index if you want to remove the elements all the way from the index to the end with no additions. So if I did clothing.splice 3, what would I get?
Shirt, shoes, hat.
Shirt, shoes, hat. Yep, got it. Okay, so that one is just it's extremely useful in certain situations. So it's just a matter of kind of remembering, and again, go look it up if you can't remember exactly what all those arguments are and what order they're supposed to be in. Okay, I want to talk for a second about method chaining. You'll want to get comfortable with this because it's very practical. You can have many changes, call many different methods all in one line of code. And all that really matters is that you do them in the right order. So they're executed sequentially from left to right. So you start with the thing that you want to operate on. So we've got letters here, right? Lowercase c, uppercase A, lowercase e, uppercase D in a string. If I were to take that and tack on to uppercase and then split on an empty string and then sort, what should I get out of that?
What A, C, D, and E all in uppercase with a space in between them?
Close. It's actually not a string, it's an array.
Ah,
Because I sorted, but I didn't join.
oh, okay.
Yep. So yes, you kind of have to think it through because it's like, okay, I'm doing things one step at a time. And I could have sworn I had some stuff in here to help with that, but maybe the transitions are just out of order. Okay, let's do the next one and then I'll see if they show up. So the next one, we take that sorted caps that we just created, because I stored all of that in a variable, right? And we operate on it further. And this time we use splice. We have got 1, 0, capital B. And then we join it with space, pipe, space. So what would I expect that to look like when it's all done?
A, B, C, D, E, capitalized with a pipe in between them
Yeah, and the spaces. Yep.
and the spaces. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really literally is. Whatever you put in join, it uses, one or more characters, and that's the connector. So in this case, if I want it to be, neatly spaced, I just included those spaces. And it looks like my other stuff did not show up, and I don't know what is going on with that. But I actually intended to have some kind of hints up here where you could see, like when you change to uppercase and then when you change again on split, kind of, what that keeps looking like. But that's all right. So that's that. And there's obviously a lot of other things you can combine. But it's the same concept. So really you just kind of have to think it through step by step. And if it helps you to like do them all on separate lines so that you can print them one by one and say, okay, if I do this, it changes it this way. If I do this, it changes it this way. And then once you kind of see, yes, I followed all those steps and I got the end result I finally wanted, then just put them all on one line and just do in that same order. That's a good way to test it, to make sure that because if it doesn't come out the way you expect, you've got to figure out which one went wrong, right? So you can just separate them out that way. Okay. Multidimensional arrays. Kayla, you have a question?
Real quick, when I'm writing my own code and we're putting a whole bunch in one line, is there a certain way to, I guess, is there a certain order that I should write it?
Yes, left to right. It's going to execute to uppercase first. Like in this first example here, it'll take letters, it'll execute to uppercase, then it splits it, then it sorts it. And that order is important.
But if I was writing this code myself and if I put sort, then uppercase, then split, would that mess it up if I was just writing it myself?
Yeah, because you can't sort on a string and letters is a string.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yep, so you have to convert it to an array first. And it doesn't really make sense that if you wanted to sort it before you went to uppercase, it wouldn't be in the right order because it treats uppercase letters differently from lowercase. Brad?
Yeah, so I had a question about the slice method.
Sure, can you give me just a second? Sorry. I had to shut my window because there's a very loud piece of machinery outside on the street. Okay, which maybe you guys can't hear it, but it was distracting to me. Okay, what was your question, Brad?
So using the slice method, the last example we did was to extract the Boolean values of true and false, which was the last two objects in the array.
Okay, so we'll go back. Oh, way back.
Sorry, just a while ago.
Way back. Sorry, it's not. I guess I could stop the slideshow and then go find the slide and then restart it. But this one, is this what you're talking about?
Yeah. So would it be possible to use the value of -2 to go from the other direction? Does JavaScript do that?
I don't believe it does. I want to say that I tried it because I learned Python before I learned JavaScript, and I want to say I tried that and it didn't work. But I could check it out. Let's see. All right. Let's say we've got info, don't care what it is. A, B, C. All right. Info dot splice. And then we would say, so your question was, could we just say -2?
Yeah, I think it uses the slice method instead of splice.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
then-
Slice, they're definitely two different things. Okay. And so I would actually need to store this. So, or just, I can just console log it. Because I don't need to keep it. We're just figuring out whether it works or not. Okay. B and C, it does work. Look at that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's helpful. Because that allows you don't have to know what the first one is. If you just needed to know how many you could do, then yes, you can do that. I think there are some ways in which situations in which using a negative index doesn't work, but this is evidently not one of them. This does work. That's cool. Good to know. Okay, let's switch back. And I am going to go and oops, I didn't mean to do that. What I meant to do was escape. And go back to where I was. If I can find it. Shift. Oh, we were on multidimensional arrays. Yes. Okay. Let's go back. All right. Okay. So arrays of arrays. Arrays can hold other arrays as elements. You can nest them. In order to access data inside the nested arrays, you want to use double bracket notation. So we're going to practice this. We've got let first 3, and that's got 3 letters in it. Let last 3 more characters. So the first thing I want to do is place these arrays inside a bigger array. So how would I do that? What do I put here and here? Given what I've already coded. No takers?
You just put in first 3 and then the other side last 3?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so I've got these arrays and I want to add them. So I can just do it by name because I've stored them each in variable names. And that will go ahead and just create this data array, and it'll have these in it already. Okay, so now if I were to console log data, what would I expect to see?
An array of 2 arrays.
Yeah,
Yep. Go ahead.
That'd be what, the ABC, XYZ?
Yes. So you've got the brackets on the outside here and here that represent the bigger array. I should say outer, bigger is the wrong word. And then you have the inner arrays, ABC and XYZ, and they're separated by a comma as well because each of these are elements. So now we need to talk about indices, right? What is data at index 0?
A?
Nope.
Oh, the first array or first 3 array?
So this is in reference to data. What's at index 0 of data?
ABC.
Yes, the array ABC, right? And we can look back here too at data equals first 3 to see that, right? Index 0, index 1. So similarly, data at index 1 would be,
Last
XYZ.
3 or XYZ, yeah.
yeah, the array that holds XYZ, exactly. So that's important to understand that, because then when you get into the double notation, you really have to pay attention, right? So what letter would I find at data at index 0 at index 1?
B?
Good. What would I find at data at index 1 at index 2?
Z?
Good. And how about data at index 0 at index 0?
A.
Okay. Any questions about that? This is important.
No, I think I got it.
Yeah. So just going from left to right, just remember that everything that you tack onto this, it's actually kind of similar to the idea of method chaining. Everything you tack on is going to be operating on what came before it. So if we know that data at index 0 is this array, it's the same thing as saying this array at index 1, right? They're interchangeable. So if you can kind of follow it from left to right, then you basically are just going from the outside to the inside. You go from the outer array, and then you go to the next array and say, I want to look at index 1 of that array. That's the concept. So then letter Y, and it looks like I accidentally clicked on this, is that data at index 1, right? Because it's index 1 of this second array. What about C? What would that be?
Zero, two.
Yep, data at index 0 at index 2. Yep. Okay, are we good? Any more questions on that? We're gonna do more
Okay.
practice in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I think this is actually the last slide. Yeah, okay. So let's come over here and we're gonna do, I don't want that to keep logging. So we're gonna do a little exercise here to help you really get a handle on this. Can everybody read that, or do I need to make it a little larger?
It's good.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, cool. So we've got 4 arrays here: veggies, fruit, dairy, and leftovers. And notice the way that this leftovers is formatted. I know I've mentioned before that a lot of companies use linting to keep clean code, and a common kind of limit is to say if anything is beyond 100 characters long or whatever, then we're going to actually split this between multiple lines. So sometimes you'll see this where you've got something that just got really, really long, and it's easier to read if you don't make it wrap. So I just wanted to show that to you guys. This is an alternate way of viewing, and you've probably already seen this in your console, because sometimes it consoles it that way for, or logs it that way for the same reason. It's just easier to read when it's broken out this way and kind of listed instead of vertically instead of horizontally. Okay, so let's start with an empty array here. And our first instructions are going to be to put veggies, fruit, dairy, and leftovers into the fridge. What array method do you know that we could use to do that all in one line?
Push.
Yeah. So we do fridge.push, and then what would I put in it?
What was it? Veggies, dairy, and leftovers.
Well, we're going to include fruit.
Ah,
Yes, and leftovers. Well, yeah, we're going to put all
Yeah.
4 of them in there.
the pop-up was covering it, so.
I
couldn't
know,
remember.
I know. That gets really annoying. And there's not a lot I can do about it. Well, there might be a way in settings somewhere to turn it off. I'm not sure. We turn off the pop-ups. Oh, the code intelligence. Yeah, but there's things about it that I like. Okay, I'm gonna leave it alone. It's fine. Okay, so yes, we can push all 4 of those arrays into this outer array all at once. And so we've done that. Now we're going to print the context so we can actually see what it looks like, because the visual is going to help us on the next several steps. So I'm just going to console log fridge. I want the entire thing. Okay, and we see that, as expected, the first 3 are horizontal, and then it split this one up vertically because it's so much longer. Okay, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I did it this way. It has to do with the fact that it got too long, and so it automatically formatted it differently.
Okay, I was just gonna ask that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I could very easily have just, had it like this, and it's still gonna, because it's just the data. Yeah. Okay. So we've done that. Now we want to print the length of the fridge. So I would do that with, oh my gosh, really? I would just do fridge what?
Dot length.
Yeah, and what is it going to be?
Uh, hmm.
16.
Nope, it will not be 16.
15.
No, it's going to be 4.
Oh, yeah, okay, veggies would be 0 up to leftovers at 4.
Yes, because each of the arrays is at a different index. This is an entire element. And this is another entire element inside fridge. And you can see it visualized here because we just used the variable representation of those arrays, right? So index 0,
Right.
1.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So each of those arrays is at a different index. And it's the same thing as we saw in that last slide, too, where, we were looking at this in terms of data 0 is this entire array, data 1 is this entire array. Same concept. But this is why we're doing this, because it takes a while to get your head around it to where you can kind of think about it without having to think so hard. Okay, so let's use fridge as a reference and print the following. Let's say we want to print the array of fruit. What would I do?
That'd be 1.
Yeah, so fridge, and we'll use bracket notation at index 1. Oops. Okay. And let's check it out. Yep. We got strawberries, pineapple, and raspberries. That's exactly what we were expecting. And then to get the length, we would do what? Using the same reference.
Fridge 1 in brackets dot length.
Yeah, and you can pronounce that at index 1. That's
Oh,
pretty
okay,
much-
at index. Okay,
yeah, fridge at index 1. I think there's probably different ways to do it. It's how I do it because to me it makes the most sense. Yeah, fridge at index 1 dot length. And so you've got that whole array there. So we're going to find out, and what do we expect this to be based on what we know about the fruit array?
2. 0 to 2.
Those are the indices, but
Oh.
what's the length?
Should be 4, right?
Nope. Strawberries, pineapple, raspberries.
3.
Oh, 3. I was looking at veggies.
Yeah. This is why we're doing this, because I want you to kind of see what it takes to think this through and make sure that everything, all these dots are connected, because it gets real confusing really fast because this is very abstract, right? When you just kind of look at these references, you're like, what the heck does that represent? But it's important that you understand what it represents. So frigid index 1 is the entire fruit array, strawberries, pineapple, raspberries, and the length is 3 because it has 3 elements of its own. Yeah, and
Okay.
yeah, and the indices are 0, 1, 2 because it's 0 index, but remember that the length is always just the count. It's the number of elements.
Yeah, I think that was what kind of throwing me off was when I use the 0 when I don't.
Exactly. Yeah, the 0 thing, index is a way of finding what, where something is in the array, its position, but it doesn't have anything to do with the total count.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's do the same thing. Where would I find leftovers in this array? And we're gonna, as we get further down in this code, you're gonna have to depend on looking at it printed up here in the console.
It's gonna be 3.
Okay, so fridge at index 3. And what about the length?
4.
Fridge index 3 dot length.
Good. Yep. And we get our leftovers and we get the length of 4. Perfect. Okay. All right, so now let's try this. We're going to 2 different ways to reference things. If we wanted to reference carrots just in terms of the original array that it was in before we stuck it in the fridge, how would we print that? the name of the array for carrots is veggies. This is it up here. So how would I refer to carrots in terms of veggies?
Veggies index 4 or 3? 4?
Index 3. Yeah, because it has a length of 4, so the last index is 3.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, why? I spilled something on my keyboard, like just a little bit of fruit juice.
Oh, no.
And I wiped it up as quickly as I could, but I think one of my keys is a little sticky. Yeah. Okay, so yes, so we can run that and we get carrots. And so, perfect, dead on. How would we do that if we want to reference it from fridge?
That would be from indices 0, 4,
3.
3.
Yeah. There again, 0 indexed, so the last one's 3.
Yeah.
Right. Good. Yeah. So we're going to position 0 in fridge, which is this first entire array here. And then we're going to position 3, 0, 1, 2, 3 in within the array to get to carrots specifically. Good. Carrots, carrots. That's what we want to see. Let's do the same thing with cheddar. Tell me what you got. First, give it to me in terms of dairy.
That would be 0. Indices 0.
Yep. Good. And then in terms of fridge.
2, 0.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Fingers are not cooperating. Good. Cheddar, cheddar. All right. Pineapple. We'll do this in terms of fruit.
1.
1.
One.
Good. And in terms of fridge.
1, 1.
1, 1.
Okay, let's try it out. Pineapple, pineapple. All right, 15 bean soup, last one. Give it to me in terms of leftovers.
Uh, 0.
Good. And in terms of fridge.
3, 0.
3, 0. Yep. Okay, you guys starting to understand this?
Yeah.
Why is it giving me trouble? Identifier expected. Yeah, I think Replic's being dumb unless I'm missing something. Oh, I think Replic's having a moment. It does this. Replit is out of sync. It'll do this from time to time. And you basically just want to check and see what was the most recent thing that I did. And obviously this is the one. So reset to mine is what I want. Because I want to make sure that these changes that I made are included. Okay. Yeah. Ignore this little error. It's being dumb. I'm not even using TypeScript. I don't know why it's doing a TypeScript check. But whatever. Okay. So good. So now you can kind of start to understand how referencing things using bracket notation, it's all relative. So if you're just talking about the inner array, and if we're using that original, thing, original variable for it, then we can just go straight to, carrots here. And when we're doing it in terms of fridge, we have to use double notation because we have nested arrays. All right. So now let's sort the fruit array, but we're going to do it referencing fridge. How would I do that?
Would it be just index 1 dot sort?
Good. Yep. So this entire thing represents the array, right? Frigid index 1. So then I just tack on dot sort to operate on that array, frigid index 1. And then I'll print it, print the whole thing just to show that it's been changed. Okay, so now we have pineapple, raspberries, strawberries. Make sense? Now we're
Yeah.
going to use different array methods here to add and remove elements. So depending on where the element is, you can decide if you want to use like, pop and push, or if you want to use shift and or unshift, or if you want to use splice, and we'll do a little bit of everything. So let's say we wanted to remove, oh, this is funny. I wrote this before I decided to add the, okay, change this to strawberries before I decided to sort things. Okay, remove strawberries and add blackberries. How would I remove the strawberries? And I want to do this in terms of fridge, remember?
Fridge index of 1 dot pop.
Good. And then we'll go ahead and add the blackberries, and then we'll log it. So what do I do to add the blackberries?
Dot push, and then the blackberries in the parentheses.
Good. As a string. Okay, and then we'll console log fridge. And now we have pineapple, raspberries, blackberries. Good. Okay, let's remove lettuce and add cilantro. First, where do I go?
0.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what would be the best, what would be the easiest method to use to remove
Shift.
this? Yes. Okay, and then if we wanted to add cilantro in that same spot,
Unshift.
good. And how do I use it?
Cilantro in the parentheses.
Right. I have to give it what I want it to add. Oh, and then let me, I really should just like make 1,000 copies of this because we're gonna do this over and over again. Okay. Yes, and now we have cilantro, bell peppers, celery, and carrots instead of lettuce. And bell peppers, carrots. Okay. Good. Now we're going to move to something less straightforward. So let's remove butter and add heavy cream and mozzarella. So where would I go for that? Oops.
So it's index 2, and could we use I don't know the proper terminology, the indices where we would remove index 1, remove 1, and then add the
Yes, so that's going to be splice.
splice.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep. So yes, so we go to 1 and we say we want to remove 1, and then what's the rest?
Heavy cream and mozzarella.
Good. Okay. My keys are definitely sticky. I'm having to work harder. Okay, and now we have cheddar, heavy cream, mozzarella, Parmesan. And this is at index 1. This is where we wanted it. And butter is nowhere in sight. So we successfully removed it. Good job. All right, now let's remove chicken tikka masala.
Index 3.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to remove it.
Comma 1.
Dot pop.
Let's see, chicken tikka masala is not last, so we can't use pop. That would remove the Brussels sprouts.
We just added comma 1 to tell it to remove 1 at index 3.
Yeah, but use a comma 1 where? Which method?
I'm sorry, splice again.
Yes, okay. Splice is a good one. Okay. And so it would be at index 1 and remove 1. Good. Okay, and then we log our fridge again to see the updated array. Good. Yeah, now we just have the soup, the pork, and the Brussels sprouts. What if I wanted to remove the celery and the carrots? all at once.
This would be
Oh.
0, and we can use pop for this one. Or not, because we're removing 2. Never mind.
Yeah, if we're removing 2, it might be more straightforward to use splice. So,
Splice 0, 1, and then just leave it.
no, actually, well, let's see. So remember that the first argument here is the starting index. So where do we want to start?
2, because we want to remove celery.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And if we want to remove everything to the end, do we need any more arguments?
no.
No.
I don't believe we do. Let's find out. Oh, I forgot to log it. That would help. We can't see it if I don't tell it to log it. Yeah, perfect. So all you have to do is say, start here and just take the rest off, and it'll take anything from there on out. All right, how are you guys feeling?
Good.
Better.
Yeah.
Getting a
So
handle on it?
So splice will remove and add, but it, you have to tell it what to add or it just removes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so like in this case, we had to give it heavy cream and mozzarella as additional arguments, so that it knew to put them in at that same index. If you wanted them to be at a completely different index, then you would need to do it in 2 separate operations.
Okay.
And one thing that I did not do, that we could do an example of is let's say we want to add, where are we? Let's add blueberries at index 2 in the fruit array. How would I do that?
So it's at index 1, and then we're gonna splice it again.
Mhm.
And it's gonna be index 2, comma 0, comma blueberries, because we want to remove 0.
Perfect. Exactly. So that's how you add without removing. You just say 0. I don't want to remove any.
Okay.
And I didn't log it, so let's do that. But so we can see the result. Yeah. So this is how you manipulate these arrays. And it changes it every single time, as we see, every mutation that we do with one of these methods gives us a new result. So we can see these changes gradually. Yep. So now we got blueberries, and blackberries has been pushed to index 3. I push is the wrong word to use, given that it's a method. It has been nudged, let's say. It's been moved over in favor of putting blueberries at index 3 or 2 rather, sorry. Okay, so anything else that you guys still feel fuzzy on or want to practice?
I'm
Really
feeling
quick.
all right.
Oh, sorry. I do have a question. So really quick, the last thing you just did, can you talk again through why it's 2, 0? I think I'm confused about the 0.
Yeah, this is a case where this number in the middle always refers to how many do you want to remove? That's the question you're answering. So if you only want to add something and you don't intend to actually remove anything, then you just say 0.
So you just have it like a placeholder because you're telling it,
Yes.
I'm not going to take anything away. I'm adding this other thing.
Yeah, when you guys learn about functions in class 5, you'll start to understand, or maybe class 6, you'll start to understand why that's necessary. But the short story is that if you have multiple arguments for a function and you need to give it a value for something that's further down, you have to include something for that other argument, or else it doesn't know which one you're referring to. Like if I took this off and just did blueberries, it'd be like blueberries is not a valid answer to the question, how many do you want to remove? Because it's expecting that second one to be a number, right? So you have to kind of say, okay, I'll give you the value for that particular parameter, that it's, you know, the remove number, and then I'll give you the rest of the data that I want. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it's okay if you don't fully understand the whole thing about parameters and arguments, because we haven't touched functions yet. But it'll become clearer. But that's the basic explanation for now, is you have to have something there if you're going to continue on. In this case, all we need is the very first one, and that's why we can leave the rest off. And in this case, all we need are the first two, so we can leave the third one off. But you can't just skip one. So that's that, yeah. Any other questions?
Carrie, can I fork this from you, because I've been all over the place today?
Yeah, no, I'm going to add the link to this into these slides, and then I will update the slides in the folder on Google Drive, so that you guys will have the link.
Okay, thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, I'll do it as soon as I get off the call. So just like, you know, within 5 minutes, you should see an updated file in Google Drive. Any other questions?
This was a game changer for sure.
Awesome. Okay, I'm glad it was helpful. Yeah, the class 3 trying to do strings and arrays in one class is incredibly ambitious. There's just so much to cover, and it's a lot for you guys to think about all at once. It will get easier a little bit in terms of the amount of new information that these fundamentals that you're having to retain. The concepts are going to get bigger. So there won't be as many new different things to learn all at once. It'll just be like, okay, now we're going to teach you one more big thing, and then you're going to do a lot of work to practice it. But what it'll do is it's going to encompass all of these other things we've been teaching you. You're going to continue to work with strings and arrays and loops and functions and all these things that are coming down the pike, and you'll just get better and better at it. But you know, having to build these fundamentals now is critical for us to be able to get you to that point. So, you know, I know it's a lot, but I'm happy to come in here. I wanted to make sure you guys had a more thorough understanding. And of course, I'll get the video up as soon as I can for everybody else who wasn't able to attend. So
The RTA warned us that this was like the building blocks, and pay strict attention to it, because it
Yeah.
makes everything easier once we get these two concepts down.
yeah, 100%. Because everything else will flow from this. And as soon as you get super comfortable with these concepts, the easier it is to not have to use so much of your brain power to keep thinking through a lot of these little things. And then you can just focus on those bigger concepts that are coming. Yep, exactly. All right, well, I will get the slide updated. I will get the video up, and then I will see you guys on Monday for loops.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. Absolutely. You guys have a great rest of your weekend.